Hey Cole, thanks for joining us today. Before we get started, would you please introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your degree from Concordia when you graduated and your path to how you've gotten to where you are now.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me here today, Jen. I am Cole Schuessler. I'm a senior research analyst at Sportradar in the broadcast media department. For Concordia, I started in 2015 and I got a 3+2, so the bachelor's and the master's in sport management, both there, as well as the minor in analytics. And I also did a graduate assistantship at Concordia with the sports information department. So that was, I believe I finished my master's degree up in 2020, early 2020, and then I was a graduate assistant in 2018-19 before I got my job at Sportradar. So yeah, it's Concordia, especially the graduate assistantship, I think was really big in terms of learning how to work full time in a job in sports. And then obviously to the master's and the bachelor's degree in sport management at Concordia. And I can talk a little bit about the analytics minor too. It was a self-designed minor, so it was kind of a learn as you go type thing. So, but yeah, definitely a lot of stuff that I learned in that job that I've taken with me in my career.
Yes. And these videos might be watched by sport management students who are just thinking about the industry. And I
Mhm.
was fortunate with my graduate degree as well to have a graduate assistantship. But I think as a first year or second year student, that's not on their radar. And they don't know that they can maybe get school for free or very reduced
Right.
cost. Can you talk more? Can you talk more about how awesome that is? And if this video makes it 20 years into the future, hopefully
Yeah.
graduate assistantships are still a thing. Talk us through that and what that looks like for you.
Sure, for sure. Yeah, so when I decided to do the 3+2 program, I had worked as an intern in the sports information department with Josh Deere, Patrick Rydeen. I had started doing that like my freshman year at Concordia. So once that came up, they asked me if I was interested in doing a graduate assistantship there. So then, like you said, the tuition was covered for my graduate school, and I also got a stipend to go along with that too. So working in the sports information department, we were posting stories to the website, photos, media, videos, that type of thing, and then events, obviously, too, keeping stats. So when I was there, I was the SID, or the sports information director, for women's basketball, golf, and track and field. So that was it was a really good experience, and I really enjoyed working with the Concordia athletics team. Even before that, I worked with Tommy in facilities. I did concessions. I did bearware with the marketing team. So I kind of got a smorgasbord of the athletic department while I was at Concordia.
So what I hear you saying is don't be afraid to put your fingers in a lot of different things because that's how you get noticed and that's how you get experience figuring out either what you like or maybe what you are not as interested in.
100%. Yeah, I thought that was one really cool part about Concordia, was the ability to kind of bop around to different jobs on campus there, with a little bit of a smaller school vibe. And two, working in sports is so much, obviously anybody in any industry, you say, well, you got to know somebody to get into, but I think it's even more true in sports. And that can sound intimidating if you don't know anybody, but sometimes it's just as simple as like sending an email saying, do you need any help with this? Or like maybe like for me, I started with bearware, and then they asked like, do you want to do this or something like that? So it can just start with one thing, right? And then you can kind of find your way to a different area too and see what you like, for sure.
Yes, totally, totally. So your career, or excuse me, so your education, and sadly we don't offer the 3+2 program anymore. That was phased out, but an awesome
Sure.
opportunity for you to get 2 degrees in 4.5 years or 5 years.
Mhm.
But you went right into the world of work. What did that look like? And were people, I mean, 2020, you were maybe right on the knife edge of luckily maybe finding something before the world decided to shut down for a while. So how
Yes.
did that all progress?
Yeah, so I was doing my graduate assistantship at Concordia 2018-19, and then I started at Sportradar as an intern in June of 2019. I got a
Okay.
full-time job in August of 2019 in the research department there. But I can actually kind of link that back to a project I did at Concordia too. So one of the things that I did for my analytics minor at Concordia was I created this data set for the football team to use scouting opponents. So I'd go on the other team's website and I would take a bunch of data off their website and I would put it into Excel and then put it into SQL, which is a query language, and then make reports for them essentially. And so they seemed to like it a lot. So I went to Sportradar, who was they like to do a lot of kind of startup things, that type of thing. And so I had met one of the higher ups at Sportradar at they had like a contest or like a idea contest essentially. So I met with him there, and then I kind of pitched him my idea for the scouting data that I worked on at Concordia. And nothing actually ever came of that, but they said, do you want this internship that we have open? So even if your idea might not be great, maybe you can show that you can think critically, right? That's kind of a huge thing. Now for me, when I'm interviewing people for spots in our department, is can you take data, especially in sport analytics, and make it into something useful, right? So so that's how I ended up getting an internship at Sportradar, and then through that internship, they eventually offered me a position in the research department there.
So what does a typical, I know this probably is a loaded question, but what does a typical day look like? Are there seasons? I mean, you all are, 365 days a week. It's not like you maybe ebb and flow, or maybe you do with different sports, or what could somebody expect if they were wanting to get into an industry like yours for workload?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So with my department, what we work on basically anything on national TV. So we work with Fox, CBS, NBC. So football, basketball, baseball, hockey, college football, college basketball. So right now is a really busy time of year, obviously, with pretty much every sport you can imagine
Yeah.
going or starting up. But yeah, a work week, I work Tuesdays to Saturdays. So working in sports, obviously, probably heard this before if you're listening to this video and interested, but you got to work nights and weekends. It's just something you got to do. But I would say it's definitely worth it. So we start at like 6 a.m. because we also support like some of the studio like talk shows and stuff. We're feeding them like statistics and analytics for their shows. They're sending in requests like how many Pro Bowl teammates has Tom Brady played with in each season of his career or something like that. So it's a lot of, and I always get the question, are you guys the ones that do like the super bizarre stats? And it's like, yeah, sometimes we do those, but usually it's because the clients request them, not. So we'll send notes and then the clients will also ask questions. And so it's about 50-50 in terms of stuff that they prepare ahead of time. Then obviously we do in-game support. So we'll go into all the games then. So past midnight, obviously. So you only work an 8-hour shift, but we have people on from like 6 a.m. until all the games end. So but yeah, I do a lot of work in SQL, like I mentioned before, coding, working in Excel, sending out charts, that type of thing. But yeah, so it changes a lot day to day, and like you said, based on the season. Right now we have a lot of sports going, and football is definitely the biggest, the most important one to the networks, as you might imagine. So so that's kind of what's going on right now, but it does ebb and flow a little bit. But yeah.
Sure. And this question I didn't send you ahead of time, but were you a college athlete? And if so, how do you think that helped you? And if not, sport management can still be a career for somebody who just loves sports, right? Can you talk about that?
For sure. Yeah, I was not a college athlete. I thought about doing college athletics, doing baseball, but I ended up deciding not to. And I was actually glad that I decided not to, just because I saw the grind that college athletics is for a lot of, it's full, like it's year round, right? But I would say there's definitely opportunities. Just kind of going back to the beginning, like so many opportunities at Concordia to work in different departments, right? And I would say you can have a knowledge of sport that's more than sufficient for pretty much any job without actually working in sport, unless maybe like you're into like coaching or something like that. But there's so many jobs in sports now that are expanding into like more into marketing, more into analytics. sports psychology. I have some friends that do that, right? So obviously it helps to have that college athletic experience for some of those jobs, but you can definitely find good positions without that as well.
Yeah. Which I think is important for people to hear because they maybe write themselves off if they aren't a college athlete, thinking this isn't the
Mhm.
major for me, but you have other skills and talents that you can certainly bring to the table.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And talking about the growth of sports and like you said, the marketing and analytics and the psychology, and it's all getting with the advent of more technology opportunities, it's getting very specific and very it really is making a name for itself, I guess. So, speaking of making a name for itself, who are people that you think are important, maybe even locally or just nationally? If we have students who want to follow somebody on social media who's making an impact in the analytics world or the sports marketing
Mhm.
world, who are some of the people that you're watching or you're kind of
Mhm.
following their careers or you're in touch with them because you're inspired or you admire the stuff that they're going after? Who are some key players in the industry?
Yeah. So one of the when you sent me this question, I was thinking of it more on like a company level, and
Sure.
that's kind of how I would approach it. Because I would say sport analytics, you're behind the scenes a lot, right? Your name isn't gonna like we send them all these stats for TV, but our names aren't gonna get put on TV, right?
Right.
They flash
Right.
up Sport Radar for like 1 second before the game starts or whatever, and nobody sees it, which is fine, obviously, but I would say trying to get like if you're interested in sport analytics, trying to get your foot in the door at a specific company like Sport Radar, Genius Sports is another one that is kind of up and coming. They did a lot of the stuff when I worked at Concordia. Actually, they were kind of creating the software for creating for stats for games and stuff like that. Sports Logic is another one. Um, so I wrote a few down here. Inside Edge is another one that I worked at. So that was like data collection that we would sell to Major League Baseball teams, and they also did hockey. So that's actually located in the Twin Cities in Bloomington. So that's
Okay.
another one, a good summer internship if anybody's interested in baseball. Let's see, Huddle is another one that does like obviously if you're an athlete, you've probably heard of that before. It's huge into film, and they started to
Mhm.
get into the analytics of it a little bit too. Um, yeah, Sport Engine is one that does like U Sports and U Sports apps. So those are kind of some of the ones that I looked into too when I was starting up. But I would say too, especially with sport analytics, is it's growing significantly even the last 10 years, and I bet the next 10 years it'll probably be even more so. So maybe I'll list off some here, but in 2 years it could be a completely different. But most of those ones that I listed off have been around for a few years now. So
For
I
sure.
think they're pretty stable, pretty interesting companies to try to get it in at.
Yeah. And do you maybe it's a trade secret, but what do you see as the next trends for sport analytics? What do you see coming down the pipe either from your company or what the public is going to be asking for or what media is asking for? Because
Mhm,
boy, oh boy, it has like
mhm.
the stuff has changed since I was a college athlete. So much more information out there and just ways to crunch the numbers. So, do you see any trends? And again, they might be outdated by the time people watch this video, but
Sure.
where do you think your world is going?
I would say there's two areas. So working, like when I was in college and I decided to do sport analytics, I was thinking, oh, I'll go work for a team or something like that. But there's not that many jobs out there to work for a
Right.
professional sports team as an analytics person. But that is definitely increasing. Like when I remember I did a like informational interview with somebody at the Twins. When I was like a sophomore in college, and they had like two or three people in their analytics department then, and that was probably like 5 years ago now, and they have, I would say 10, 15, 20 now. It's growing, it's definitely growing. So I would say at the professional level, it's people have caught on that it's an important thing where you can make if you can make a 5% difference to make your team better by hiring a bunch of analytics people, maybe that's something that you should do. I would say
Yeah.
in college it probably hasn't caught on quite as much yet, but I definitely think it will because there's a lot of money in college athletics as well, and so you can kind of
Mhm.
follow the money around a little bit. But then the other area I would say too is sports betting has become a lot more popular, with it being legalized in more states too. So I think that will be another area where it probably increases a decent amount as well.
Yeah. How about things, let's shift gears from trends back to some of your own personal reflections. When you reflect on your past few years as a, full-time professional, what is something that you've learned both professionally and then also something that you've learned personally, either about yourself or about the environment that you're in, just that you've had time to reflect on in your last few years as a full-time employee?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I would say finding something that you're interested in and that you're passionate about is huge. And you probably heard that a ton of times before, but I don't think it can be said enough, right? It just makes it so much easier to go to work and invest yourself like in a project, in an everyday thing, a job where you're not like looking at the clock, like waiting for it to end. And so kind of going back to what we were talking about before, trying a lot of different things too, at the beginning to find out what you like, maybe not pigeonholing yourself as much. Um, Personally, I would say currently I work from home. And so I think that's probably what a lot of jobs in like the analytics area are kind of trending towards. So being able to like create good habits, even in
Mhm.
sport, I think it's tougher in sport because you're working nights and weekends, so your schedule varies a lot too. So finding ways to kind of create good habits outside of your job, find things that you enjoy doing outside of your job to making time for those as well. I'd say that's definitely something that I've learned through my time at Sportradar as well.
Oh, those are wonderful words, especially for college students to hear as our work world continues to evolve and those lines blur between, especially with
Right.
working from home or hybrid situations, and your job can consume you. And even if you do love it and you're excited about the projects and you're not watching the clock, if you aren't careful about that, that can turn into something that's not enjoyable, and that can go downhill pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Being able to separate the work day, especially when you work from home, it's harder to separate, the work day from your time at home, relaxing, getting stuff done outside
Yeah.
of work, is important to do, I think.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you what you wish you would have known, or something that you weren't told, but you found out either the hard way, maybe positive or maybe not
Uh-huh.
so positive, but something that you're like, oh, if only somebody would have told me that.
Yeah, for sure. This is a tricky question. I would say, so for me personally, I started off at Concordia as an undecided major. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I was thinking maybe psychology. I like to write a lot, so I was thinking maybe like English. I eventually got interested in sport management, exercise science. So I would say one thing that I often tell people is it's okay if you don't know what you want to do right away. Um, But at the same time, being in college, you have a lot of opportunities to try different things out. And so to make sure, like if you try out like working with marketing department for a semester or something like that, you could find out if you like it, or you could cross it off your list and be deciding, I don't want to do that, that type of thing. And to also job shadowing, I think is a really good opportunity for a college student, because once you're done with college, it's a little bit harder to just email and say like, hey, I'm so and so and I want to come like to your work and job shadow you. But if you can go in as a college student, right? If you're doing it for a project, or just say like, I'm interested in your company, I'm a college student, I'd like to see more about what you do. I think a lot of people will be very receptive to that. So just trying different things out. It's okay if you don't know what you want to do, but kind of exhausting your options in terms of who do I know, and like what can I try to see, like if I like to do that. And I think Concordia has a really good network. Dr. Huberty and Dr. Ross, I was in a lot of their classes in sport management. I think one of the things that I really appreciated in the intro to sport management course with Dr. Huberty was she brought in a lot of different people from different industries in sport, and so that gave you a really good idea, or at least gave you a contact
Mhm.
for somebody to go and talk to. Maybe they aren't somebody that you could job shadow, but they know somebody, that type of thing, in a similar industry. So
Yes,
that
yeah.
that would be a couple of the things that I often do tell people actually. So
Wonderful. No, and I think that is, yes, words for everybody to live by for sure. Cole, what would you say? So you indicated that you do some hiring for your company right now, or you interview people. And yeah, the jobs are probably pretty competitive, and people think it maybe sounds like a dream job for them, but you also need to look for a person who's going to match up with what you all need for your environment and personality and stuff like that. So, what characteristics are going to set a sports admin professional? What's going to set somebody apart from the other 50 people that have applied for the job?
for sure, yeah. So I would say generally, I don't remember who said this, but one person in Dr. Huberty's class, their piece of advice was make yourself indispensable to the team. And so I think what that means is, to me at least, it means fill a void, maybe in the workflow for your team that is really important to them. So maybe try to find something where your talents align, and excel in that area, right? Or let's say, like for me on my team, we didn't have a lot of people that were like super comfortable doing training. So once I was a few years in, I started offering to like help out with training once we got new hires in, and eventually that led to like promotion, that type of thing too. So so I'd say, yeah, find fill a void, make yourself indispensable in terms of like general advice. If you're looking specifically towards like sport analytics, I would say become proficient in Excel. I think it's really good thing to do. And even if you don't end up working in sport analytics, just having that Excel skill is helpful in so many different jobs. And then definitely the computer science part of it too, like learning a programming language. I know it kind of sounds daunting at first, but there's so many different ways to learn it now. I think even if you don't learn it in school, like maybe you're like a sport management major and you don't have time to take computer science classes or something like that, learning SQL, that's definitely something that I look for when we hire people. Like, do you have experience doing this? And then can you explain how you would apply that experience, right? So like you said, it's very competitive. In certain jobs, like we'll post a job and get like 300 applicants or
Oh,
something like that.
oh man.
But yeah, like I said, it does help to know like we've hired people because we know them, like so it just makes a huge difference there. If I can circle back to that point too, but yeah, just reaching out to somebody, because there's so many applications to sort through, right? So knowing somebody and then trying to zero in on the core skills that they're looking for, and exhibiting that you have those skills and you can apply them to the job as well.
Would be some words of wisdom for a Concordia student?
For sure. Yeah, I would say definitely take advantage of the options that Concordia has to offer. Because I think it's a really unique experience where you can be in the big city and have like all of those different opportunities. Like we got to do the Ryder Cup when I was there. That was just at Hazeltine. And like I said, Dr. Huberty's sport management class, we got to learn from so many different people there, and then in the athletics department too. So I would say try to take advantage of your opportunities, learn to see what you like, and what you're passionate about, because I believe everybody has, a purpose and they have a set of talents, and sometimes you don't know what those are right away. So, and that's okay. So I would say, yeah, those are kind of a few of the main points. I know I already hit on some of them, but I feel like they're really important, especially because working in sports can be a little daunting at first. But I think it's definitely, with how much it's growing, there's definitely a place for, if you really want to work in sports, you can definitely find a place where you find a job that you're going to enjoy.